Good, good.
Under the light.
Let me clear my throat. Not appropriate.
Holy.
She can. I was on it too. If she wasn't.
I believe we break for intermission and they bring midnight snacks.
Just
Just kidding.
You sure?
That's
Yes.
Thank you.
It's going to be on the Eastern State Facebook and on FAMM.
Can you put a filter?
Right?
A little filter?
Yes.
Filter would be great.
I really don't even need a mic. How is my voice? Yes.
And I need a makeup
All right, we need to
person.
take a panel selfie. All right. Everyone, now, panel selfie. I'm like,
I'm the only one with my mouth open.
Celeste, please try to get your attention.
oh. Center Street or? Oh, okay. All right, we'll take them without your hand.
Okay, good.
I was going to do
I'm
the
not
peace
ready,
sign,
I'm
but
doing my peace sign.
I usually do the peace sign, but you know.
Told you I'm not right. I'm doing the peace sign.
Good evening. Welcome to Eastern State Penitentiary Historic Site. Is there anyone who is here tonight for the first time? Just a handful of people. Welcome. We always love seeing new faces, and we especially love seeing old friends back inside the building. I'm Sean Kelly. I'm the Senior Vice President, Director of Interpretation. Want to welcome you to Eastern State Penitentiary. And welcome Representative McNeil and Representative Webster and Senator Street. And thank our friends at FAMM for gathering some old friends and some new friends here inside the building. I'm going to very quickly tell you about Eastern State Penitentiary. First of all, I should mention welcome on behalf of our President, Sally Elk, and our Board of Directors and our entire event team. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Eastern State Penitentiary, I'll give you the 3-minute history. The building was built on farmland outside of Philadelphia. Today it is a museum. Most of our visitors take an audio tour. We are proud second chance employers. This is not something we advertise on our website, but if you take a tour of Eastern State Penitentiary, your tour guide might bring up his or her personal experience with incarceration. We believe that's a useful skill set for people on our education team. Not all of our education team is formally incarcerated, but some are, and we're very proud second chance employers here at Eastern State. We also host art installations. This is Russell Craig, by the way, talking about how he learned to paint while he was incarcerated inside of our chaplain's office, which has paintings in the 1950s painted by an artist who was incarcerated here. We have art installations like this piece by Jesse Crimes that he made while he was incarcerated in federal prison. We talk a lot about how the prison system has changed since Eastern State closed in 1971. This is our big graph showing the growth of the prison population over time. We also have a companion exhibit called Prisons Today that asks questions like, have you ever broken the law? We have found that even as we talk to our visitors about things like race in the justice system today, questions that can sometimes be challenging for our visitors to consider, our attendance is thriving. Our attendance has gone up by 400% in the last 10 years. We think that Americans are ready to have this conversation, and we think that Eastern State Penitentiary is one of the key places that the conversation can take place, and this is part of that. If you like what we do here, I encourage you to join our membership program. This event is free because of the kindness of our members. We'll have our membership desk here as you leave. I also want to point out that we are building a visitor center with this gorgeous central atrium And we are fundraising for that as well. So tonight we're lucky with nice weather, but those of you who know us and come to these things know that this is the best space we have for gathering people, and it's not air conditioned, it's not heated, and there aren't modern restrooms in this building. So I always try to remind myself on warm nights or on cold nights that people used to live here. And so we have it relatively good, but still for a modern museum, we need a modern visitor center. So that is our next thing that is up. This is the Searchlight series. This is the first Tuesday night of every month, month in and month out. It's always free. It's always at 6 to 7 o'clock. It's pretty quick. It's meant to be before dinner. There's always an informal reception to follow. If we run out of time for Q&A, come talk to our panelists at the reception. You can sign up for our mailing list. We also have a survey. We really do read the surveys, and we really do base our programming on the response of our audiences. Next month, we have Barry Lamb, who is talking about the fight for the future, crime and punishment in the age of artificial intelligence. That's next Tuesday night in November. And finally, I just want to thank our friends at FAMM. I was saying to Celeste earlier that we featured FAMM in our mass incarceration exhibit as an organization that's really making change before we met any people on their staff or we ever worked with them. We really admire you guys. You guys are doing great work. And to frame tonight's conversation, I'll end by saying that we spent the last year inside of prisons, in fact, one that's overseen by Mary Rosa Lamas, Superintendent Lamas here on our panel. Our staff has spent the last year going into the prison that Superintendent Lamas runs and working with people to make animated films, which we then projected on the outside wall of our prison for a month. And the reason I bring it up tonight is because, I don't know, you would know, Superintendent, but half the people in that class are probably serving life without parole, or as many people will call it, death by incarceration. And when you spend time with people who've done decades and have paid a very heavy price for the mistakes they made decades ago, and you realize the extraordinary potential that is locked away inside of Pennsylvania prisons, it's really something. It really takes spending time inside those spaces with those people. Our organization is not in the business of sorting out who belongs in prisons and who doesn't. There are many other organizations that do that, but we do say there should be fewer people in Pennsylvania and all American prisons. We believe that we can maintain public safety while having dramatically fewer people incarcerated. And spending time in SCI Chester really brought it home to me and our team of just the extraordinary potential of people who are serving these endless sentences here in Pennsylvania, truly endless sentences, people who are convicted, sentenced to die inside prisons. There's a lot of room for debate about what direction we could be going in the future. So with that, welcome again to Eastern State Penitentiary. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Sharif Street, who's a true leader in this subject, and I believe he's going to say a few words. Senator.
Good evening. I want to thank the folks at FAMM for helping to organize this event. I want to thank everyone at Eastern State Penitentiary for hosting us, our panelists for being here and sharing their wisdom, insight, and experience, and each of you for attending. There are 635 people in Pennsylvania who are serving life without parole who never took a life. There are people who are serving life without parole in Pennsylvania who are battered women who only killed their abusers and who today would be sentenced differently, but were sentenced before the battered spouse defense. There were people who were sentenced at 19 years old who are now in their 60s who are completely different people today than they were 45, 50 years ago when they were sentenced, and who today, as geriatric inmates, have a statistical zero chance of recidivating. Pennsylvania has some of the most unforgiving laws around life without parole of any state in the country, and America leads the world in prison population. It is not a place of distinction. It is a dubious distinction that we have and not something we should relish in. I've introduced Senate Bill 942. Representative Dawkins has introduced House Bill 135, which would provide parole eligibility for lifers. Now, that doesn't say that everyone who's serving life without parole will come home. Some people clearly won't. But it gives the Board of Probation and Parole the ability to sort out which people should come home and which people shouldn't. This is a board that's already making tough decisions about who to be released for people who've been convicted of rape and people who've convicted of murder 3, involuntary manslaughter and manslaughter. It's time that we take a common sense look at who's serving life without parole in our prisons. There are people who are serving life without parole because they drove a car away from the scene of a crime, and in the process of doing so aided and assisted a person who committed a crime. The person who committed a crime may have gone into a store, pulled out a firearm, and attempted to rob somebody. And in the process of their attempting to rob it, the person attacked them, and they fired the firearm and killed the person. And at sentencing, the person that fired the gun, who was probably charged with murder 1, with success, in many cases, is successful to be able to argue the provocation because they were attacked. And therefore, their charge of murder 1 is dropped to murder 3, and they're granted parole after about 25 years. But the person that drove the car was never attacked. Charged with murder 2, which is being involved in a felony which resulted in the death, is sentenced to life without parole. And in one instance, the person that pulled the trigger had been home for 15 years after serving 25 years, and having served over 40 years, the person who simply drove the car away was not even physically present when the trigger was pulled, still serving life without parole. We have a broken system in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We're working to reform it. There are many, many parts of it, including we need probation and parole reform for technical violations and many other things. 50% of the people who will return to Pennsylvania's prisons are people who are there because of technical violations of probation and parole. We have a system that is in need of reform. I'm proud to be a sponsor of a number of pieces of legislation, including Senate Bill 942, which provides parole eligibility for lifers, which I'm a prime sponsor, including being a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 14, which reforms probation and parole. And there are many other things we need to look at around why we continue to have a cash bail system, which causes poor people to spend time in jail simply because they don't have a small amount of money to place for bail, who are not considered flight risks. There's so many issues we need to address. But there's an old Native American proverb that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Thank you for taking the first step or an additional step, depending on, for some of you have been on this journey for a while. By being here tonight, we've got a ways to go, but together we will reform this system. We will provide relief to families. We will provide relief to those incarcerated. We will stop wasting tens of millions of dollars incarcerating people who do not need to be incarcerated. Money that could be better spent improving schools, providing services to victims, providing education and job training for people who are invested in economic development projects, but it should not be wasted on incarcerating people who are no longer a threat to society. It should not be spent on things that don't make us safer, but cause people's lives to waste away. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Senator Street. So really quickly, I just wanted to bring up Salim Holbrook from CADB, just to give a quick, 30 seconds, if you don't mind, so you can get on with the panel overview about what the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration is doing in Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Celeste. Very quickly, in 30 seconds, the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration is a collaboration between family members who have loved ones serving life without parole, community activists, and prisoners on the inside who are serving life without parole. And it is framed around what we would like to call the 2 R's, redemption and restorative justice. And that is, just like Senator Street says, what CABI is fighting for is for people who are sentenced to life without parole, regardless to first or second degree murder, regardless of the role in the crime, to have just the opportunity to show that they were more than their worst act that they have ever committed or participated in. It's not a get out of jail card. It's not a guaranteed shot for release. It's just to give that person who has served 20, 30, 40, and in some cases 50 years, the opportunity to go before a parole board, put their cards on the table and say, I am no longer the person that I used to be. But also, in recent years, CADB has recognized that we have to address the harm in our community. So we advocate restorative justice. We advocate a process where the offender, people like myself who were sentenced to spend life without parole as a juvenile, who had the opportunity to come home, hold ourselves accountable for our actions, but also come out here and make amends and start working in our communities and contributing to somehow balance, because we know that we can never correct, but maybe balance the harm that we have caused our communities. Thank you.
Should I try to just... So FAMM just released a really short video about second chances, and we want to play that real quick, and then we'll get on with the panel.
Never works when you actually do it in front of the audience. It's working just fine a minute ago. It's going to work. Hold on. Come on.
I really love reading spy novels. I'm a big fan of romance novels too. Please don't tell people that. I really love the simple things in life. Just hearing the sound of horns honking, cars. When I see and I hear these things in the community, it makes me be a better person because I want to remain a part of it. I'm always looking up something that's going to make me a better person today. That's going to make me a better person for tomorrow. It's small things that you learn to appreciate when you lose so much of your life. My name is Tyrone Walker. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. When I was a young 17-year-old, immature, foolish young man, I committed a crime that I will always regret for the remaining days of my life. I went to prison with a 127 year and 8 months to life prison sentence. When I went to prison, I was 19. I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life there. I thought I was going to die in one of those cells.
Tyrone benefited from a law the DC City Council passed in 2016. That law was a Second Look Act. It gave people who committed serious crimes when they were young an opportunity to prove they had been rehabilitated and deserved a second chance.
In prison, I learned to write, I learned to read, I learned to research, I learned to communicate with people, and more importantly, I learned to ask for help.
The district is now considering a proposal to expand its Second Look law. The idea has been embraced by the justice reform community and has support from some unlikely allies.
I was in my early 30s when Jerry was killed. When he first went to prison, I just wanted him to rot in hell, because he hurt my family, he hurt my children. As years went on, I've learned that he's done a lot. He's done positive things, and he is forgiven by me. I think he's so much better being here than in prison for the rest of his life. How would you feel if you were judged for the worst thing that you did in your life for the rest of your life?
And it's not a day that don't go past that I don't wish that I could take that day back. What I did as a foolish, immature 17-year-old.
The people that deserve a second chance, they're making their communities better. They're making their communities safer.
I'm not that same 17-year-old now today. I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a grandfather, I'm a community member.
People change and our laws need to reflect that. The purpose of Second Look laws is not to let everyone out of prison. It's simply to stop throwing everyone away.
I can do this. Okay, thank you. So obviously that is a law going on in DC right now, so that doesn't apply to us. But right now in Pennsylvania, we do have two pieces of legislation that would address life without parole in Pennsylvania. As Senator Street mentioned, he introduced Senate Bill 942, and then in the House, Representative Dawkins introduced House Bill 135, and both of them would allow parole eligibility for people who are serving life without parole in Pennsylvania. We have over 5,400 people in Pennsylvania serving mandatory life without parole. That is for first degree and second degree murder, and it's mandatory. The judge has no option at sentencing to look at that person as a whole person. It's a mandatory life without parole sentence. So that's our discussion tonight, the topic of our discussion. This awesome panel, I'm so happy to have every single person here who's on the panel. Instead of me introducing them, because I'm not going to do them all justice, I'm going to give them all a chance to just introduce themselves and let everybody know what their connection to life without parole in Pennsylvania is. We'll start with Donnell.
Should start with that. My name is Donnell Drinks. I came home July 20th of last year after serving 27 and a half years of a life without parole sentence. I benefited from the Miller versus Alabama ruling. Absent of that, I'll still be serving a life sentence.
Thank you. Ms. Didi?
My name is Ms. Didi. I'm a mother of a lifer of an only child who was incarcerated 3 months after he turned 18 years old. And in January, my baby's going to be 44 years old, and he's still incarcerated.
Good evening. My name's Mary Rosa Lamas. I'm one of the superintendents. I'm currently assigned to the State Correctional Institution at Chester. I am the most tenured superintendent in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections currently, and the only Hispanic superintendent in Pennsylvania Department of Corrections history. I consider myself to be a somewhat progressive superintendent, so it has been somewhat of an uphill climb for us, or for me, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
My name is Chester Holman. I was arrested on August 20th, 1991, convicted of second-degree murder on May 3rd of 1993. I was released on July 15th of 2019, and I was exonerated on July 30th of 2019 after serving almost 28 years in prison.
So as you can see, this panel has a very, very vast array of experiences, and also kind of their points of view on things are a little bit different. And I want to start with Ms. Didi. One thing you didn't mention is the fact that you lost someone in your family to homicide. Could you talk to us about what that was like being a co-victim of homicide, and then also having a son who is now serving life without parole?
I had a younger brother. October 25th will be exactly 27 years to the day he was murdered. I hated the guy that killed my brother. I wanted him to die the same way my brother died. I wanted his family to suffer how my family was suffering. And you go through these motions of hatred and anger, and more than anything, revenge. Revenge is the only thing that comes out of you, because that's what you want. But a year of having all that emotion in me, I know that I didn't want to wake up every day with this bitterness and this hatred inside my heart. So I've learned to forgive this young man. You see, he's also somebody's son, somebody's brother. And more than that, he's also human. Little did I know that this was something God was preparing me for, because down the road, several years afterwards, was when my son was incarcerated. And closure may mean what it means to everybody, their own way. To me, closure would mean to have my brother back in our lives. That's never going to happen. So closure for me was the minute he died. But also, I'm filled with forgiveness for this young man. Because when you're young, you don't use your brain that God gives you. You know, when you're older, you tend to use it more. But when you're young, you just leap in the water without even testing the water out. And my son did that big mistake in his life. And as I said before, that's my only child. I decided not to have no more babies because I didn't have my only baby. And I'm what you call a dual victim because I lost a brother to violence and I have a son that's incarcerated, but I'm also what you call a human. I exist like everyone else does. And the judicial system that we serve was not there when we lost my brother, and they're there even less now that they have my son. And this is something that I live with every day. When they incarcerated my baby, I also was incarcerated. There's not a day that I don't cry for my child. There's not a day that I don't think about my son. And I get out here, I'll talk to the world with no shame because we need to fix this system. This system is broke. It's not only broke, but it's unfair. Because if you're not rich, and if you're not the right color of skin, they won't treat you like a human being. And my son made a mistake when he was 18. He's remorseful. He's a changed person. He became a man in prison. But on top of everything else, he was still human. And we need to learn how to start treating people as human. We've come to live in a life where we're caring more about animals than we do about human beings.
Thank you so much, Ms. Didi. We will all be lucky if we get through this without weeping. I'm going to say right now, I'm already at that point in introductions. So I want to move on to Danelle. So you were 17 at the time whenever the situation changed your entire life. You know, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and some of the things she does, I sit there and like, what did I do? Like, what's going on, right? But I look at her and I think of all the people I know who were convicted of doing something when they were 17, 16, and they paid for it for such a long time. What was it like being a child, right? And being put in a situation where they told you that your life had no value. But then also, what was it like throughout that process of growing and maturing over those 27 and a half years that you spent inside?
First, before I even answer that, I have to preface it with saying, whenever I mention my age, I only do it as a context to what I'm about to say next, not as an excuse or as if it minimizes it, even though legally it does. I'm saying for myself, in order for me to take ownership for my role in my crime, I have to understand I took ownership for role in my crime. One of the things that was hard for me to really grasp my hand around with was the magnitude of the act. It took me years later to really realize the magnitude of what I participated in, because you don't understand all the connecting factors of how much damage that came from it. And not only the immediate victim, but the victim's family, the community, your family. And then you lose a piece of yourself when you come to grips with the reality that you took a life. So for me, it took years to deal with that anguish before I could even start to build and heal. And when I did, I realized that I wasn't only doing it for me, but for all those other parties I mentioned already. It was a level of responsibility and obligation to go on the right path. And at the time, you didn't know where that path would end up. It was wherever I'm at, I'm going to affect change. And so I got active in things inside the prison. I went to school. I got college under my belt. I did all these things, and not for no other reason, but because I owed it to the universe. I owed it to society. I owed it to my victim. I owed it to my victim's family. So when you say when somebody else didn't realize you had value, for a lot of these guys and women you're talking about that's incarcerated, they have to hold on to their own value system because nobody else will in that situation. Unfortunately, there's a lot of times we don't know about the advocates such as yourself that's out here fighting for us. It's the loneliest situation because you think this insurmountable obstacle is just you crawling on it until you hear stories of Chester and everybody else that there is hope at the end of the tunnel. So to answer your question specifically, you go through stages of bitter, you go through stages of hopelessness, you go through stages of loneliness, you go through all these different emotions, sad, embarrassment, shame, because I come from a family that doesn't run in and out of jail. And they had to live with my last name of somebody who committed such a heinous act. And to be able to come to grips with these things and to try to maintain relationships and bonds as a human was the hardest thing. Because you can intellectualize anything you've done. You can intellectualize and rationalize your age. You know, I didn't know, but emotionally and mentally, it kills you. It tears you apart. And you live with it daily. You never get over it. You never get over it. And I'd be remiss to say that part. You never get over it. And you can use it to tear you down and live a level of anguish for the rest of your life, or you can use it as a stepping stool of motivation to accomplish something good. And I chose the latter.
Thank you. So I want to move on to Superintendent Lamas. So I've been to your facility multiple times. It's one of the places I enjoy. It sounds weird, but I do enjoy actually going into your facility because of the way that you care for the people who are under your supervision. So you've been in corrections for quite a while, yes?
I've been approaching my 30th year.
So you basically grew up with a lot of the people who are still serving life without parole sentences. So as someone who is in a position of authority, right, over people who are serving life without parole sentences, but at the same time, you insert yourself in their lives, right? What have you seen? Do you see this idea of what people always think with, oh, everybody who is offended in a certain way is a certain type of person? Or do you see something very different in the people that are under your care?
So I think when you begin corrections, you morph into just what you truly always are going to be. So I started my career as a counselor in a time a year after the '89 riots at Camp Hill. So showing humanity, really not the best idea when you're one of few females in a male dominant kind of organization. So for me, it's kind of always been going upstream. I say that to say that it wasn't until, so I was a deputy superintendent at one of the prisons, somewhat a homogenized region, that I was a little like, wow, really don't fit here. But I became warden at Muncie. And I used this example. I was coming down the steps, and you quickly see yourself in the eyes of a woman. If you have any connection to if you're a woman, if you identify as a woman, you see yourself in that space. Coming down the steps, I see two offenders, one offender in the back. Somebody says, hey, Sue, you know about that? I said, no, I don't. Perpetrator, victim. These two ladies sexually assaulted the daughter of this woman. She then in turn sexually assaulted somebody else. All three are in prison. And I distinctly remember the day. It was bright. It was a bright, sunny day. And I said, we are doing something wrong. And so for me, my charge has been, so I'm Hispanic. I'm a female. I'm a feminist. Really not the trifecta you want to go into, going into corrections. Spanish is my primary language, born and raised in Puerto Rico. I remember when I was deputy superintendent at one of the facilities, I was told I couldn't speak Spanish to the inmates. I'm like second in command. Like there's only one person ahead of me. And I began to realize that it is just, we judge that particular individual by a horrendous day in their life. A horrendous day in their life. So corrections comes for punishment. We begin in the punishment phase because we take you're sentenced by the courts. You come to us. Everything is taken away from you just by our policies and things that we do, right? Then you go through this hill of rehabilitation and you see the forming of that person who's always been there. And then what I failed to understand, so I was speaking with one of my lifers today. He's 84 years old. Help me help you. Help me help you to understand what is the benefit of that gentleman being incarcerated? Zero. So I look at it as this bell-shaped curve, punishment, rehabilitation, and for the lifers, it goes back to punishment. And we don't want to call it that. We just don't. And we need to do a better job. There's not a lot of individuals who are willing to color outside the lines. But if you fail to see yourself in the eyes of someone who you govern, then you really shouldn't be sitting at the superintendent's seat. It's that simple. At somebody's brother, wife, sister, mother, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. And I'm not here advocating saying every human being needs to be released. Absolutely not. But the majority, especially that 84-year-old man that I spoke with today, what is he doing in prison? What? Nothing. He's nothing. What's he trying to do? Get a single cell. Why? Because whatever time he has left, he wants to be in a single cell. What's my responsibility? To bend the rules and get him a single cell. That's on my to-do list. So I really think at times, we have to balance everything with victims' rights because there's somebody whose life changed forever because of this one act, right, wrong, or indifferent. Balance that with community safety, the safety of our staff, and the humanity of who we incarcerate. Because there's not a big difference. There just isn't. There's just a different path and how we choose to go on that path. So for me, it's really, really important that we model the humane behaviors that we want to see when these gentlemen and ladies are released. And if you fail or you cannot, then corrections may not be the best fit for you. And we don't do it all right. We're not really good at what we do at times. And for those of us who fail, I apologize. Not all 26 of us do the right thing. But I can guarantee you that 1 out of the 26 is trying to do the right thing every single day. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to my dear friend Chester here. And I'm going to try not to cry. My goodness. So, Chester, you spent nearly 28 years in state correctional facilities for a murder that you had nothing to do with. You weren't there. You barely even lived in the city of Philadelphia at that time, but you were just recently exonerated. But you did spend 28 years nearly inside state correctional facilities with people who did offend, right? What was your experience as someone who basically, since you were 21, kind of grew up in the state correctional facility without ever having offended, but you were with other people who did? Did you see transformations from the people who you saw inside that you spent all that time with?
Most definitely. Before I get to that, I've been sitting here, and I've been home a little over 2 months now, and I'm sitting here looking at this gate down here. And I said when I got out, I said I was never going back to prison. So when Celeste called me a few weeks ago and and asked me to come and speak at Eastern State, I just said yes, because like I said, for the last 2 years, Celeste has advocated for me as she does for so many others. And she was really a support system for me while I was in prison fighting for my release. So I just said yes without even thinking about it. But when I came to that gate, I said, what the heck did I just do? And now, and now I'm sitting here and I'm just like, my heart is just, but nevertheless, I'm here and I'm thankful to be out and released. But anyway, back to your question. I went to jail, like I said, I was 21. I just turned 21 years old. And, when you're young, you're 21, I was thrown in prison. I didn't understand how it happened or why it happened. I just knew I was there. And somewhere in that time, I was just trying to figure it all out, like, what was happening. And going through the process of the trial, preliminary hearings, trials, and so forth, it was just long and drawn out. I just never thought that this could happen in this country. You know what I mean? Whereas if you're innocent, you don't go to prison. I said, the night they arrested me, I said, okay, well, they're going to figure it out. And we went through the whole process of preliminary hearing. I said, when we get to trial, they're going to figure it out. Then they found me guilty of second-degree murder. It was just like, I already knew what that entailed. It was life without parole. So, we went through the appeal process. We appealed from the time I got convicted in 1993 all the way up until 2017. And I was denied every year. We went as far as the United States Supreme Court, and we were denied at every level. But in that time, like I said, I kind of lost myself because, like I said, being thrown into prison and being given a life sentence, I knew in Pennsylvania that life was life, and I was never going to get out. And it was a struggle, but there was a lot of guys in there that, I guess, as a young man, they took me under their wing and more or less guided me through. And a lot of those guys were lifers. And at the time, I was fearful of lifers. Man, these guys ain't going home. Even though I'm one of them, but I just didn't know about the system itself. And they embraced me and they took me in as one of their own, so to speak. And they guided me and showed me how to become a productive citizen within prison, as well as helping me to become a man. Because, like I said, I hadn't become, I was a young man. So, during that time, I came to know quite a few lifers. And like I said, lifers in prison are like, I believe, the pillars of the prison community. These guys are pretty much, we try to find our own hope, because within the system doesn't really, it's not geared for lifers, because they feel as though you have no future. So therefore, you're kind of brushed aside. And it's all the programs and the good jobs in prison are set up for guys that are going home. So preparing these guys to go home. So lifers are more or less left to fend for themselves. So if a lifer doesn't have his own drive or finds his own way of coping and, hope or light at the end of that tunnel, he's done. And that's kind of where I was headed at. But like I said, these lifers came in and they just kept coming to me, kept coming. Don't lose hope, don't lose hope. If you're innocent, it's going to work out. But I watched 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. I was just like, it's never going to happen. But like I said, these guys never gave up, and they just kept pushing me and pushing me. Like I said, I've watched one of my closest friends in prison. He has 47 years in and of a life sentence, and he was 18. And he's one of the most humble and generous people I've ever met in my life. And he's in there, and he takes young guys, and not just young guys, but everybody that comes through prison, and he more or less tries to guide them in the right way. And I'm saying to myself, it was quite a few years ago, I said, these guys are going to die in prison, along with myself, but these guys are going to die in prison because Pennsylvania, life is life. And, you know, I came to see quite a few lifers, and there's no hope. Like I said before, there's no hope for lifers. So therefore, we try to create our own vision of hope, or a vision of something to just keep us going, keep the drive within us. And I've watched so many guys change and transform into these men, these great men. I mean, like we go in there, and like I said, they went in, and at 20 years old, 21, 25, like you don't know no better. You just product of your environment. You know what I mean, but when you get to prison, it's just a different world. You're forced to face the realities of this world. You're forced to see who you really are, and you know, and that's, you find that more or less. Like I said, a lot of these guys, like I said, they're in there now, and they're not the same people as they were as they went in, and you know, they're deserving of a second chance. But like I said, they're not given that chance. And you know, when I was leaving the prison, I think we had, where I was at, there was 102 lifers there, and out of that 102, I think 69 of them, 68 or 69, I got their information, and I've been in contact with since I've been home. And they write me and they call me. I mean, it's a lot, you know what I mean? You know, they need money. They want me to stop and see their mothers, you know, check on their kids. You know, I'm doing the best I can, but I'm still trying to, you know, find my own way. It's only been 2 months, but I'm doing the best I can, you know, just how to get these guys, because I've been there. You know, just to kind of give these guys hope, to make sure they hold on and let them know that somebody's there on the other side. Because a lot of guys have lost their family. I have 2 people in my life that are still actually here. I mean, I have a big family, but 2 people that actually still, that was my father and my sister that are still here. My mother, my grandparents, they all passed away. So a lot of these guys don't have that. A lot of these older guys don't have anything, no one. So I'm trying to be that beacon of hope for them out here. And you know, like I said, I don't know what to do yet, but I just know I have to do something. Try to lend my voice to, you know, allowing them to be heard out here. You know, they're deserving of a second chance. And, you know, even like I said, not everyone's going to get out. Not everyone deserves to get out. I can just clearly say that. Just by the things I've seen some of these guys doing it. But there's quite a few that are deserving. And you know, like I said, as long as I'm able to do it, I'm going to, you know, try to, you know, lend my voice to this fight.
Thank you so much, Chester. So interestingly enough, I was actually sitting right here moderating a different panel the night that Chester got released from prison, and I kept checking my phone to make sure that it was actually happening, because I was just completely blown away. So I want to go back to Ms. Dede. One thing we don't think about when we incarcerate people is the impact of the incarceration on the family. As a mother of someone who has to go and visit her only child in prison, what is the impact of that on you as a mother, but also your family and your community? The things about having to drive to see him that long, having to go through the metal detectors, not being able to, at this point, send original mail to him. Like, what is that like for somebody who is not actually being incarcerated?
It's hard, especially the part of not being able to send my child a card that's from me. You know, my son and I will play tic-tac-toe through the mail. We can't do that anymore. I can't. It's been 2 years now since the DOC policy, going on 2 years, that been put in place, where I haven't written my son a card. I haven't bought no card to send him, because it's not even about the cost of the card, but he's not going to get the card straight from me. They're going to take the card, make a photocopy of it, and give him a piece of paper that has a photocopy of the card that I cried over, the card that I let him know how much I love him. And it's not the same. And it's hard because I get to see my baby 5 times in a year. He's 4.5 hours away where we live at. You have to buy a card to buy food. hard. You have to pay for a car that is already yours. You have to pay to get the car. And then these corny phone calls that they give us, it's like you're lucky if it's even 15 minutes. Out of 15 minutes, 10,000 little, hello, this is state correctional. We know that the minute you first pick up the phone. Why must you keep interrupting these precious, priceless moments that I have with my child to remind me that he's in a prison? I know he's in a prison. And it's hard because my mother's 88. My mother helped me raise my son because when my son was incarcerated, I was lost out on drugs. And my mom took care of my son for me. And I try to prepare my son because I know my mom's going to pass away. And I don't want him to lose his mind in there. And after all the work that he worked so hard for, to lose it because he's lost his mother, his grandmom. So I try to prepare him for it. And he says, Mom, I only ask you for one thing. Don't call the prison and have them tell me that my grandmother passed away. Come and tell me yourself. And I promised him that that's what I would do. It would be hard because that's my mother. But I wouldn't let them tell him. I'll be the one that would give him that news. So as far as being hard, yeah, it's hard. He's got 2 granddaughters. They have, between the 2 of them, 5 he has 5 great grandkids. And they're so busy into their lives, you know how young people are, that he's met them because I've taken them up there to meet him, to them. Because when I see my son, I don't go see him for one day. I stay the whole weekend so that I can see him 3 days in that weekend. But he's gotten to meet his grandbabies. And it's hard. It's hard when my grandbaby, my great grandbaby tells me, when can I go see Papa? You know, it's hard because she used to draw pictures with him. She doesn't understand why she can't do that anymore. So yeah, it's hard.
Thank you so much. Chester, I want to pose the same question to you. And again, I'm probably going to start crying, but what was a life sentence like for your family, especially when they knew you didn't even do anything? What was it like for them to have to fight for so long to try to clear your name? But what was it like for your family to have to go through that?
I really can't speak fully to it. I mean, I've learned more since I've been home, but during that time, I knew it was costly. You know, my parents wanted to get the best lawyers in Philadelphia, so you know, my dad, he didn't have a great job, but it was enough to sustain our family at the time. So I know they went into a lot of debt, great debt. My dad went and got 2 and 3 jobs. My mom wasn't working because she was on dialysis, so my dad was the sole provider for our family. My sister was, you know, she was young, so you know, it was hard. And they would come see me I was maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes away, so they would come see me initially every week. They would come every week, and then it became every other week. And I just know the financial burden that they put on my family. And then my family spent over like $200,000 on attorneys just for me to still end up with a life sentence. And you know, my dad's he's still paying. You know, my mom has since passed, and my dad is, you know, he's in debt, and I'm trying to help, you know, but like I said, I've been here 2 months, and like I said, I'm trying to still figure, because I have a lot of things that, you know, I'm dealing with. And so for them, I used to watch them come in that visiting room every week. And then, like I said, whenever they came, I used to watch them come in. My mom was, you know, she was, like I said, on dialysis, so she was very frail and always tired because she was always gone to dialysis. So she would come in and she would she tried to perk up when she saw me, just to like kind of lift my spirits and make sure I was always good. My sister, we would still argue, even I'm in jail, we still argue. You know what I mean? And my dad was that rock, but I just saw it on their faces. But going back to the week of my trial, and when they found me guilty, I just turned around, I looked at my mother, and the look on her face, and my father and my grandfather, because we didn't think this was going to happen. I said, they're going to figure this out. They're going to say, because we'll be 4 people in this case, and I was the only one on trial. And like Senator Street was saying, they said I was in the back seat, and there's no shooter, there's no driver. I'm a co-conspirator, but I'm the only one on trial. So my lawyer at the time said, worst case scenario, you'll get 10 years. Now, I almost had 3 years in the county waiting to go to trial. So he said, what you'll get is 10 years. I said, 10 years? I was like, for what? He said, that's just worst case scenario. They'll find you guilty of 3rd degree. So I put in my head, even though I wasn't accepting it, but I said, okay. So when they came back and said 2nd degree, like I said, my family was just, looked at me, they were just devastated. And like I said, they always showed strength when they were around me, when they came to see me, whenever I called. And at the time, I didn't realize how much those phone calls were. I was calling back to back to back to back. And it wasn't until after my mom passed and my grandmother told me that those bills were like close to $1,000 a month because I was calling. I didn't realize. They never told me. They would have said something, I wouldn't have called as much. But my mom wanted me to always feel like I had that outlet that I needed, because like I said, it was hard. So I would call her and we would just talk. I just kept calling. And I never realized it. And, after my mom passed, but that was going back, that was my biggest fear. I don't know why, but the first day I got locked up, that was the first thing that came in my head. I said, if I don't get out of here, I said, something's going to happen to my mom. It's going to kill me. And it didn't happen until 9 years later, but nevertheless, it happened. That was my biggest fear. And it finally happened. And, and then I watched my dad. He just, he tried to hold on. Like I said, he's been strong, but like I said, I just know it's this thing has taken so much from my family, and not just financially, but like I said, emotionally. And now that I've been home these 2 months, just listening to my sister, she's always crying, always staring at me, always trying to guide me and direct my path, and just making sure, because every time I go out the door, she thinks I'm going back to jail. So she has this fear now, don't go to the mall, they're going to lock you up. Stay off the street. Don't go to, don't stay out of Center, stay out of North Philly, wherever, and, it's, I'm not gonna say it's annoying to me because I understand, but at the same time, it's like kind of put me back into prison. You know what I mean? Like I said, they have these fears that they're, projected onto me because of what we've been through. Even though I did the time, my sister always says, we did the time right with you. And I didn't understand that initially when that first week she said it. I'm like, no, you didn't. I said, you didn't stand for count. You weren't there getting strip search. But since like I said, these few weeks, and like I said, we've talked, she did do the time with me. They did do the time with me. I just didn't realize it because like I said, I was in it. But now I'm looking back, like I said, I'm just trying to do the best I can to be there for them like they were there for me. And it's difficult, because I'm still at financial burden because like I said, I've received a lot of help, but at the same time, they've helped me. And like I said, they're not rich, but my sister, she's always buying me something, and, she wants to spend time with me all the time. And like I said, I didn't realize how deep this thing really is for them. I thought I had it, but it's for them. And I'm looking at them every day, and my dad, he cries all the time. And he looks at me and he just always tells me, I'm glad to have you home, And I just say, Dad, I'm glad to be here, Dad. You know what I mean? I try to do as much as I can in the house, around the house, whatever I can. I try to remain humble. I try to, be the best son, brother, friend that I can be because, like I said, they were there for me. I know so much has been sacrificed for me. So I'm trying to reciprocate that now that I'm there. But like I said, I didn't fully understand. And like listening to Miss Dee Dee over here, I truly understand what she's saying, and I can relate. Because like I said, I think of my own mother, my own grandmother. And, it's just, just trying to, make the best of it now. And like I said, I'm going to do everything I can going forward to be there for my family like they were there for me. And like I said, I really try that every day.
Thank you. So we're running short on time. I have 2 more quick questions, and then we'll open up for Q&A quickly. And there is a reception out there. So again, in just a minute or 2, I want to ask 2 questions. So Superintendent Lamas, if you had a magic wand and could go across the state correctional facilities, all 26 we've got in Pennsylvania, what would you do with that magic wand as far as lifers go? Would it look the way it looks now, or would we have far many people serving life without parole in Pennsylvania?
So my magic wand would be twofold because I have the mic. So it would not look the way that it looks now. Right now, certainly at Chester, we're trying, my men, that I think the lifers, and I think you gentlemen are correct, the lifers are the pillars of our community. So I engage myself and I immerse myself in the lifer community. What we've started to do, certainly at Chester, is to try to get them as close to the gate as possible in terms of outside clearances. And if we vote yes for commutation, then we're trying to get them that close. Also, Chester is the first state correctional system in the United States that will be adopting Scandinavian values and correctional practices into one of our units. But it wouldn't look the same. We have to give that lifer population an opportunity to go up to parole and say, I've changed. This is what I've done. Or I haven't changed. And this is what I haven't done. But with that same wand, I would tap into our communities. Corrections is the end of that cycle. Our failing educational system, our failing communities, our failing families also take part.
Right. Yeah.
And so, we can't undo whatever was done in the first X amount of years. We'll try our damnedest. And I appreciate, like prison reform has gotten to be the new sexy. And I take great offense to that. Because prison reform has always been the right thing to do.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Just because so-and-so goes out and raps about it, just because Jay-Z thinks he's fine, just because Senator fill in the blank thinks I'm going to push this bill in, well, where the hell were you 20 years ago?
Come on.
So it would be twofold. It would be to get my men and women in a better place to get out. But by God, I would charge those communities to do the right thing, to have a good educational system.
Right.
Because we know that high school degrees, GEDs, have a direct correlation to being out of prison. So do the right thing, community, because it's also on you. That's it.
And on that note, I do want to say one thing. We did have 4 mandatory minimum bills voted out of committee in the House, in the House right now. One of them is $1 billion bill. The DOC did an analysis. It would cost billions of dollars for taxpayers. And like Superintendent Lamas was saying, that money could be used so many other places in our communities to heal our communities that we're not using it on corrections, correct?
Listen, do not build one more facility. Not a one. Not a one. Build better schools. Get better teachers. Get better community supervision. Get boys and girls clubs out there. Get the YMCA out there. Get what you need to get.
Right.
But don't build one more prison. Do me that favor.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
Back off the mic.
All right, so we are out of time. So what I'm going to do is end it with Donnell telling us about the amazing work he's doing in the community. If anyone has questions for our panelists, I'm going to ask if they just stay behind and we can ask questions. There is a reception out there. Everybody can ask questions there as well. But I wanted to allow our panelists to have the extra time to speak on all of these issues, because they come from such amazing places with this, with ending life without parole. So I know Donnell is doing some amazing things in the community, and I just wanted to give him a chance to say that. But also, before I do that, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we have this really cool SMS feature right now that everyone pull out your phone. I know everyone has one. If you can text the word reform, REFORM, to 21333, we actually have an action that will take you directly to your lawmakers, and we'll send them an email and a petition saying, you know what? We believe in second chances. So please take up these bills this session or next session, whenever it's going to happen. But we need to lean on our lawmakers. If this is something that you care about, please, lawmakers work for us. We've got a couple in the building. Thank you. They do work for us, right? So if you care about this, please take a minute, talk to your lawmakers, text reform to 21333, reform 21333. All right, now turning it over to Donnell.
Real quick, one of the things that I've found it important to be is to be the ambassador for the prisoner, the ambassador for the second chance. And not only because everywhere I go, I speak on their behalf or for them, but I live my life for them to represent that chance. Because every time somebody does something that's on parole in the community, every lifer becomes their co-defendant. Every lifer becomes their rappy. But I took it upon myself, and it's a bunch of us out here that are doing the correct things and the right things. And we're telling everybody, the lawmakers, the superintendents, the commutation board, we'll be their rappies. We're doing the right things in these communities. Point to us and say, if we can do it, they can do it. Because a lot of us were raised by those lifers you're speaking about in these penitentiaries. Since I've been home in this short period of time, I work in reentry. I assist and mentor men and women coming home from prison. I help them with their transformation into the community, help them with family reunification. I assist them in housing. I'm mentoring in the public school system. I started mentoring at Dobbins with, I think it was 12 kids. All this was done free. I didn't do it for a check. I did it for a purpose. And that's what happens when you hire and give somebody a second chance. They live for a purpose, not a paycheck. They become the best productive citizens. They become the best family members. They become the best example of humanity. Because once you take somebody's life from them and you give them a chance to breathe again, they excel because they cherish their breath.
I believe that.
So with that being said, I found an organization called GROWN, Gaining Your Respect Over Your Worst Nights. And it's used as a catalyst for men and women to do just that. Because a lot of times we got community service, we got to live under paperwork, but it's undignified. So our whole goal is to do things in a dignified manner to make me want to do something in my community. And through this past summer, we've had peace pop-up shops, which was dispensing information throughout the communities. And from it came a concept of a safe zone for our kids and our families. We hear this say something, see something, say something concept everywhere but in our communities. Guess what? The men and women that's coming home is a whole workforce, a whole army of change. We were the architects that built this community of nonsense, and we are the ones that are going to tear it down. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you guys for being here tonight and sharing your experiences. I got through it without crying too much. So thank you all for coming out. Obviously, this is a very, very important topic.
My name is Fred Burton. My father's been in prison since I'm 4 years old. I'm 53, serving a life sentence. He has a court date, November 4th. You can get with me, and I can give you the address. We're fighting for his freedom. My father was incarcerated during the times with the Black Panthers. Not everybody did one thing, but because of association, they gave them all life sentences. Since then, being in prison, my father was also accused of committing killing the warden and the deputy warden, which is known as CFCM. Once again, association. But if my father never would have been in prison the first time, at the age of 23, and I'm the oldest, he was incarcerated August 31st. My brother and sisters, who are twins, was born September 2nd. So we've grown up with this for close to 49 years. He was a family man, but he was associated with the Panthers. And Rizzo at that time made sure everybody was going to pay the price. Some of us is young enough not to know about that. Some of us do. But you feel free to come to my dad's courtroom. Fill the courtroom to have the support. That's all I'm asking. It's up to the judicial system, basically. And yes, I do agree with the aging, lifers, and so forth and so on. I do agree that. I know what kind of man my father is. He's probably helped a lot of men out.
I just want to say, can all the lifers that have come home please stand up so that we can recognize you?
Because all of you are,
This is my hope.
these are our friends, our community members, our mentors. And we're grateful for all of you.
I do that for the purpose of that keeps my hope alive.
Yep.
Because that's my son.
Yes. On that note, thank you all for coming. For real, thank you all for coming. This topic is so important to me and so important to everybody up here. We appreciate you all for coming. Lean on your lawmakers, please, please.